Imagine stepping onto a plane, the air humming with the promise of a journey. Families settle in, children gaze out the windows, and you find your seat, trusting the metal bird to carry you safely. But what if that trust is broken? What if the familiar sounds of flight fade into silence? This is the story of Helios Airways Flight 522, a journey that began in the Mediterranean sun and ended in chilling mystery. On August 14, 2005, at Larnaca International Airport, 115 passengers boarded Flight 522, most returning home to Greece. The Boeing 737 gleamed on the tarmac, ready for a routine trip. Yet, a simple, overlooked detail would set off a chain of events leading to unimaginable tragedy. Passengers stowed bags, listened to the safety briefing, and settled in, unaware their flight would become a legend for all the wrong reasons. They were about to become part of the haunting saga of the ghost plane, a flight with no one consciously at the controls. This story explores the fragile relationship between humans and the machines we trust. It's a tale of fatal oversight, cascading errors, and an invisible enemy at 34,000 feet. We'll follow the flight from hopeful takeoff to its silent, circling path above Athens. And we'll uncover the quiet heroism that flickered in the flight's final, desperate moments. The engines of Helios Flight 522 roared to life, the aircraft taxiing onto the runway. In the cockpit, Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten and First Officer Pampos Charalambous, both experienced, ran through their checklists. With clearance, the Boeing 737 lifted into the clear Cypriot sky. Everything seemed normal. Passengers relaxed as the cabin crew, led by Andreas Prodromou, began service. The plane climbed toward cruising altitude where the world below faded away, but at 10,000, then 15,000 feet, a hidden threat grew. Earlier, maintenance had switched the cabin pressurization system from auto to manual for a ground check. The switch was never returned to auto, a small oversight. As Flight 522 climbed into thinner air, this error became catastrophic. The pilots in communication with air traffic control were calm and professional. The autopilot guided the plane toward Athens. Inside, the atmosphere was relaxed, no one sensed danger. But the problem, a single switch would soon seal the fate of everyone on board. The threat was silent, invisible, and insidious. Cabin pressurization is the unseen miracle of flight, keeping the air breathable at altitude. Normally it's fully automatic, but on Helios 522, the system was left on manual. As the plane climbed, the cabin's air pressure didn't adjust. At 12,000 feet, a warning horn blared in the cockpit. The pilots, confused, thought it was a takeoff configuration warning, a sound identical to the critical cabin altitude alarm. They checked systems, radioed Helios operations, and focused on the wrong problem. The ground engineer asked if the pressurization panel was set to auto, but the pilots, likely already affected by hypoxia, missed this. Their minds were locked on a puzzle that made no sense at altitude. The blaring horn was a desperate warning about the very air they were breathing. As they climbed higher, oxygen in the cockpit and cabin depleted. The pilot's ability to think and reason faded with every second. The siren meant to save them instead led them into confusion. The critical misinterpretation sealed their fate. The real danger was invisible and the crew was running out of time. The warning was not about the plane's systems, it was about survival. As the plane climbed, hypoxia, a lack of oxygen, began its silent attack. The first effects are subtle: lightheadedness, euphoria, impaired judgment. The pilot's ability to diagnose the problem vanished just when they needed it most. At 18,000 feet, passenger oxygen masks deployed. Passengers, confused and afraid, pulled the masks on, expecting safety. But the masks only provide oxygen for 12-15 minutes, enough time for an emergency descent. The pilots, incapacitated by hypoxia, did not descend. The precious minutes ticked by, the oxygen supply ran out. One by one, passengers and crew lost consciousness. The plane reached 34,000 feet, autopilot leveling off. Inside, there was only silence. Pilots slumped, passengers motionless. The entire aircraft became a ghost ship, flying perfectly, but with no one awake. A modern airliner filled with over 100 souls sailed silently through the stratosphere. The hum of the engines was the only sign of life. No one was left to save the flight. The invisible enemy had won. Entering Greek airspace, Flight 522 failed to contact Athens air traffic control. Controllers called again and again, only silence. The plane's icon moved on radar, following its path with unnerving precision. Instead of descending, it entered a holding pattern, circling Athens. On the ground, concern turned to alarm, a silent, unresponsive airliner over a major city. The Hellenic Air Force scrambled two F-16s to intercept. The fighter pilots pulled alongside the Boeing 737, peering into the cockpit. They saw the first officer slumped over the controls, the captain's seat empty. Through the windows, passengers sat motionless, oxygen masks on, no movement. The fighter pilots relayed their chilling observations. The plane was on autopilot, everyone appeared unconscious. News channels broadcast live footage of the circling airliner, shadowed by jets. For over an hour, the ghost plane circled Athens, a tragic monument to a disaster already unfolding. The fuel tanks were emptying, the flight could not last much longer. As the F-16S watched, a figure moved in the cockpit, not one of the pilots. It was Andreas Prodromou, a 25-year-old flight attendant and certified commercial pilot. He had survived using a portable oxygen bottle, staying conscious while others succumbed to hypoxia. Alone, he entered the cockpit, realizing the pilots were incapacitated and the plane was doomed. He faced a monumental task, flying a 737 he'd never been trained to operate. The fighter pilot tried to get his attention, but Prodromou was focused on the controls. He disengaged the autopilot, taking manual control. The plane's circles stopped. His voice crackled over the radio. "Mayday, mayday, mayday! Helios 522 Athens. I cannot descend." His calls were weak, strained by hypoxia and stress. He repeated the call 5 times, desperate for help. He knew the plane needed to descend, but didn't know how. The fighter pilot saw him gesture but couldn't understand. Despite his heroic effort, Prodromou was fighting a losing battle, against the machine and his own failing body. He was the only conscious soul left, trying to save the flight, but time and oxygen were running out. Andreas Prodromou was now in command of a dying aircraft. The left engine flamed out, starved of fuel. The 737 began to descend. For a moment there was hope, but it was an uncontrolled descent. Prodromou fought to steer the jet away from populated areas, thinking of those on the ground. The fighter pilots watched helplessly as the airliner plunged. He was a flight attendant who became a captain in his final minutes, facing the impossible with courage. His actions provided crucial information for investigators. The right engine soon flamed out, the plane became a powerless glider. Prodromou stayed at the controls until the end, steering toward unpopulated hills. His final act ensured no more lives were lost on the ground. He was a guardian to the very end. His bravery shone in the darkest moments of the flight. At 12:04 p.m., nearly 3 hours after takeoff, Helios Flight 522 crashed near Grammatico, north of Athens. The impact was catastrophic. The aircraft disintegrated, igniting a massive fire. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but there were no survivors. All 121 people on board, 115 passengers and 6 crew, had perished. The crash site was a landscape of twisted metal and profound loss. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Cyprus and Greece. The world demanded answers. How could a modern airliner fly on autopilot until it ran out of fuel? Investigators recovered the black boxes holding the key to the disaster. The recordings revealed the pilot's confusion, the blaring alarm, and the fatal sequence of events. The world waited for answers, hoping to find meaning in the unthinkable. The investigation confirmed the cause, the pressurization switch left on manual, leading to hypoxia and incapacitation. Contributing factors included inadequate procedures, ambiguous alarms, and failures in crew resource management. The tragedy forced the aviation industry to change. Boeing redesigned cockpit warnings, airlines improved checklists and training. The story of Flight 522 is now a case study in human factors and the dangers of hypoxia. The 121 lives lost made the skies safer for millions. Their sacrifice is remembered in every safety procedure and every flight. The story is a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the responsibility of those who fly. It is a tribute to the victims and to Andreas Prodromou, the flight attendant who fought until the end. His final human echo lingers in the silent ghost plane.